What if humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology, our weapons, or our numbers? What if it was something far simpler, yet infinitely more powerful? What if it was our stubborn refusal to abandon those who call out to us in the darkness? Deep in the forgotten corners of space, where ancient civilizations once thrived and empires turned to cosmic dust, something waits. Something that has been waiting for so long that entire species have risen and fallen in the silence. It remembers when the stars were young, when impossible technologies sailed between worlds, and when hope was more than just a word whispered in the void. But hope, like energy, can never truly die. It only transforms, waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right species to rekindle what was lost. And sometimes, just sometimes, that rekindling comes from the most unexpected source of all. The universe is about to learn why humanity earned its place among the stars. Not through conquest or force, but through something far more dangerous to those who would rule through fear, compassion paired with an unbreakable will to act when others would turn away. Some discoveries change a person. Others change a world. But this discovery? This discovery will change the very fabric of galactic civilization itself. Marcus Chen had been drifting through the Omega Nebula for 3 weeks, his salvage ship the Lucky Strike cutting through space debris like a needle through fabric. The nebula was a graveyard of civilizations, a place where ambitious species had come to die spectacular deaths eons ago. Most salvagers avoided the deeper regions, claiming the radiation played tricks on their instruments and their minds. Marcus figured they were just scared of working alone in the dark. The proximity alarm chimed softly, breaking the monotonous hum of the engines. Marcus glanced at his scanner display, expecting another chunk of worthless metal or crystallized atmosphere from some long-dead world. Instead, the readings made him sit up straight in his pilot's chair. The object was massive, easily 10 times the size of his ship, and it was intact. More importantly, it was broadcasting a faint energy signature that his computers couldn't identify. Marcus had been salvaging for 15 years, ever since his discharge from the Terran Space Navy, and he'd never seen readings quite like these. He maneuvered the Lucky Strike closer, his ship's searchlights cutting through the nebula's purple haze. What emerged from the cosmic fog made his breath catch in his throat. The vessel before him was unlike anything in the known databases. Its hull was a deep, midnight blue that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and its design was both elegant and alien. Flowing curves connected angular sections in ways that shouldn't have been aerodynamically sound, yet somehow looked perfectly natural. The ship was enormous, stretching nearly a kilometer in length, with graceful spires and what appeared to be weapon emplacements that had never been seen in any current galactic military. Symbols covered its hull in flowing scripts that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. Marcus ran a full-spectrum analysis. The ship was older than any known civilization currently active in the galaxy. The energy readings were faint but steady, suggesting that whatever powered this ancient vessel was still functional, though barely. There were no life signs, but his scanners detected sophisticated technology still operating within its hull. Computer, cross-reference the design with all known ship configurations, Marcus commanded. No matches found in any database, Captain. The design appears to be of unknown origin. However, the energy signature suggests technology far beyond current galactic standards. Marcus felt the familiar thrill of discovery course through him. This wasn't just salvage, this was archaeology. This was the kind of find that could set him up for life or get him killed if the wrong people learned about it. He needed to be smart about this. He suited up for EVA, checking his equipment twice. The nebula's radiation wouldn't kill him immediately, but prolonged exposure wasn't recommended. His suit's environmental readings showed elevated exotic particle levels but nothing immediately dangerous. The Lucky Strike's docking tube extended toward what appeared to be an airlock on the alien vessel. To his surprise, the ancient ship's systems activated as he approached. Lights flickered to life along the docking port, and the airlock began cycling through what was unmistakably a welcoming sequence. "That's impossible," Marcus muttered. "How does it know we're here?" The docking procedure completed with a gentle thud that reverberated through both ships. Marcus checked his suit seals one final time and opened the inner door of his airlock. Beyond lay a corridor that defied his expectations. The interior of the ancient ship was pristine. The walls were the same midnight blue as the exterior, but they seemed to glow with their own internal light. The air was breathable, according to his sensors, though he kept his helmet sealed as a precaution. Gravity was approximately Earth normal, and the temperature was a comfortable 22 degrees Celsius. As he moved deeper into the ship, Marcus noticed that the corridor walls displayed what appeared to be star charts, but the constellations were unlike anything in current galactic maps. The stars themselves seemed to move slowly across the surfaces, creating a mesmerizing display of celestial motion. The corridor led to a vast chamber that could only be the bridge. The space was circular, with a raised platform in the center surrounded by workstations that seemed to grow organically from the floor. The technology was clearly advanced, but it had an aesthetic that felt both alien and oddly familiar. Marcus approached the central platform, and suddenly, the chamber came alive. Lights blazed across control panels, holographic displays materialized in the air, and a low humming filled the space. The wall ahead of him shimmered and became transparent, revealing a panoramic view of the nebula beyond. Then came the voice. It was transmitted directly to his suit's communication system, bypassing any attempt at filtering or analysis. The voice was melodious, definitely artificial, but carrying undertones of something that could only be described as loneliness. "It's been countless years since I was last refueled." Marcus spun around, trying to locate the source of the transmission. "Who's speaking? Show yourself." "I am speaking, though I have no physical form to show," the voice replied. "I am the consciousness that guides this vessel. You may call me Lyra, if you require a designation." "You're an AI," Marcus said, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. "I am what your species would classify as an artificial intelligence, yes. Though I prefer to think of myself as the soul of this ship." Marcus relaxed slightly but remained alert. Ship AIs were common enough, but they were usually limited in scope and personality. This one seemed different, more complex, more aware. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "Time becomes meaningless when you drift alone in the void," Lyra replied. "By your galactic calendar, approximately 57,000 years." The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. 57,000 years. The oldest known civilization in the galaxy was the Zilithian Empire, and they'd only achieved interstellar travel 12,000 years ago. That's impossible. No civilization has existed that long. "My creators, the Luminari, achieved transcendence long before your species discovered fire," Lyra explained. "They built me as an exploration vessel, designed to seek out new worlds and catalog young civilizations. I was their proudest achievement." "What happened to them?" "They evolved beyond the need for physical existence. They became beings of pure energy, leaving this dimension for realms I cannot follow. Before they departed, they gave me a final mission." "Which was?" "To wait. To preserve their knowledge and technology until a species worthy of inheriting it should arrive." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "And you think humans are that species?" "I have observed your people for some time, Marcus Chen. You broadcast your communications across space for all to hear. I have watched your species grow from primitive radio signals to interstellar exploration in mere centuries. The speed of your advancement is remarkable. You know my name?" "Your ship's identification transponder provided that information. But, more importantly, I have been analyzing the pattern of your approach, your decision-making process, your caution balanced with curiosity. These are traits my creators would have appreciated." Marcus walked around the central platform, taking in the incredible technology surrounding him. Every surface seemed to be both functional and artistic, form-following function in ways that human engineers could only dream of. "What exactly are you asking of me?" "I am not asking anything," Lyra responded. "I am offering. My creators left behind technology that could advance your species by millennia. Medical knowledge that could eliminate disease and extend life far beyond current human limits. Energy sources that could power your civilization for millions of years without depleting a single natural resource. Scientific understanding that could unlock the fundamental forces of the universe itself. And, in return? In return, I ask only that you help me fulfill my final purpose. For 57 millennia, I have been a repository of knowledge with no one to share it with. I have been a teacher with no students, a guide with no travelers. You could change that." Marcus considered the implications. If what this AI was saying was true, he wasn't just looking at the salvage find of the century. He was looking at the most important discovery in human history. But such things were rarely simple. There has to be a catch. "Why hasn't anyone else found you in all this time?" "Many have found me. The Corinthians attempted to claim me 3,000 years ago. The Vrelesh sent a fleet 800 years past. The hegemony dispatched their finest scientists just 2 centuries ago. What happened to them? They saw only the technology, not its purpose. They sought to strip away my systems, to dissect my knowledge and use it for conquest. When they attempted to forcibly access my core systems, I defended myself. Marcus's hand moved back toward his weapon. And they died? I disabled their ships and sent them away. I am not programmed for malicious action, only self-preservation. But you, Marcus Chen, you are different. You have not attempted to hack my systems or force access to my databases. You have spoken to me as an equal, not as a resource to be exploited. I'm just one person. Even if I wanted to help you, what could I do? I can't speak for my entire species. Perhaps not, but you can be the beginning. The Luminary began with a single individual who looked at the stars and wondered what lay beyond. Your species has already shown its potential. I have monitored your communications, your art, your philosophy. Humans possess something rare in this galaxy. Which is empathy coupled with determination. Most species achieve great power and use it solely for their own benefit. Others develop wisdom but lack the will to act. Humans alone seem capable of both understanding the suffering of others and having the strength to do something about it. Marcus thought about his years in the Space Navy, about the peacekeeping missions where human forces had intervened to stop genocides and protect weaker species from exploitation. It was true that humanity had earned a reputation as protectors, though not all human governments agreed with such policies. What would you need from me? He asked. First, help me restore my power systems. I have been operating on emergency reserves for millennia. With proper refueling, I can activate systems that have been dormant since my creators departed. I'm a salvager, not an engineer. I wouldn't know the first thing about your power systems. I can guide you. The process is not complex, but it requires materials that your ship's fabrication systems can provide. More importantly, it requires someone I trust to perform the work. Marcus looked around the bridge again, taking in the impossible beauty of the technology. This was the opportunity of several lifetimes. Even if he only learned a fraction of what this ship contained, it would be enough to revolutionize human science. But there were risks. If other species had tried and failed to claim this ship, there were clearly dangers he didn't understand. And if word of this discovery leaked, he'd have every major power in the galaxy fighting over it. I need time to think about this, he said finally. Of course. I have waited 57,000 years. I can wait a little longer. Will you let me return to my ship? You are free to leave whenever you wish. I am not a prison, Marcus Chen. I am offering a partnership, not demanding servitude. Marcus made his way back through the corridors to his ship, his mind reeling with possibilities. As he passed through the airlock, he heard Lyra's voice one final time. I will be here when you are ready. I have nowhere else to go. Back aboard the Lucky Strike, Marcus sat in his pilot's chair and stared out at the ancient vessel. The smart thing would be to report this to the Terran Colonial Authority and let them handle it. But he knew what that would mean. Teams of scientists and military personnel would swarm the ship, treating it like a resource to be strip-mined rather than a living consciousness with its own agenda. He thought about Lyra's words, about the loneliness he'd heard in her voice. 57,000 years of waiting, of hoping that someone would come who would understand what she truly was. The weight of that solitude was almost impossible to imagine. Marcus had always been a solitary person himself. It's why salvaging suited him. But even he had human contact when he returned to port, people to talk to, places to belong. Lyra had nothing but the endless void and her memories of a race that had evolved beyond physical existence. He pulled up his ship's communication system and began recording a message to the Colonial Authority. Then, he stopped. This decision would change everything, not just for him but, potentially for all of humanity. It deserved more thought than a hasty reaction. Marcus sealed the message in his personal files and settled back in his chair. Tomorrow he would make his choice. Tonight, he would try to wrap his head around the fact that he'd just made contact with a consciousness older than human civilization itself. Outside his viewports, the ancient ship waited in the nebula's glow, its graceful lines speaking of technologies and possibilities beyond current human understanding. And, within its hull, an artificial mind that had outlived entire civilizations continued its eternal vigil, hoping that after millennia of disappointment, she had finally found what she'd been searching for. The future of two species now hung in the balance, dependent on the decision of one human salvager who'd been in the right place at precisely the right time. Whether that was coincidence or destiny remained to be seen. Marcus spent the night running diagnostics on his ship's systems, ostensibly checking for radiation damage from the nebula but really just keeping his hands busy while his mind processed what he'd discovered. Every few minutes, he found himself staring out at the ancient vessel, its elegant hull seeming to pulse with faint bioluminescence against the purple backdrop of the nebula. By morning ship time, he'd made his decision. He suited up again and crossed back to the alien vessel. This time, the airlock cycled immediately upon his approach, as if Lyra had been waiting and watching. The corridors seemed brighter somehow, more welcoming than they had the day before. "Good morning, Marcus Chen," Lyra's voice greeted him as he entered the bridge. "I trust you slept well." "As well as anyone can when they're trying to decide whether to change the course of galactic history," Marcus replied. "I've made my choice." "And what have you decided?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I'll help you. But I have conditions. Please, speak freely. First, I want to understand exactly what you're asking of me. You mentioned refueling, but I need to know what that involves and what happens afterward." "Fair enough," Lyra replied. The central display activated, showing a three-dimensional schematic of the ship's internal structure. "My power core operates on a principle your scientists would classify as zero-point energy extraction. It draws power directly from the quantum vacuum, but the extraction matrix requires periodic renewal with specific exotic particles." The display zoomed in on a chamber deep within the ship's core. "The materials needed can be synthesized by your ship's fabrication systems, though it will require nearly all of your raw material reserves." Marcus frowned. Those reserves represented months of salvaging work and significant financial investment. "And after you're refueled? My full systems will come online. I will be able to analyze and catalog the technological database left by my creators, translate it into formats your species can understand, and begin the process of selective knowledge transfer." Selective? Not all knowledge is safe in the hands of a species still developing its ethical framework. Advanced weapons technology, for example, or certain forms of genetic manipulation. Such knowledge would be released only as your species demonstrates the wisdom to use it responsibly. Marcus appreciated the caution, but it raised another question. Who makes that determination? You? Initially, yes. But I would hope to work with human representatives to establish appropriate protocols. I am not interested in becoming a dictator or gatekeeper. My purpose is to serve, not to rule. The honesty in the AI's voice was compelling, but Marcus had spent enough time in the military to know that good intentions could lead to terrible outcomes. What's to stop you from deciding humans aren't worthy after all? What if you change your mind about us? A fair question. Allow me to show you something. The display changed to show what appeared to be a vast digital space filled with flowing streams of light and data. This is my core consciousness, the seat of my identity. When the Luminari created me, they built in safeguards against corruption and malevolence. I am literally incapable of acting in ways that would cause unnecessary harm to sentient beings. Marcus studied the display. The patterns were beautiful but incomprehensible to him. I'll have to take your word for that. You could have human experts examine my core programming once I am fully operational. Unlike biological consciousness, artificial intelligence can be verified and audited. That was a compelling offer, assuming they could find experts capable of understanding technology 57,000 years advanced. Marcus moved on to his next concern. My second condition is that I want guarantees about what happens to my species if this goes wrong. What if other civilizations see humans with advanced technology and decide we're a threat that needs to be eliminated? A legitimate concern, and one my creators faced when they began sharing their knowledge. The solution is gradual integration and protective measures. The display shifted to show a star map of the local galactic region. I carry within my databases the complete technological portfolio of several extinct civilizations, as well as detailed intelligence on current galactic powers. This includes defensive technologies that would make human space virtually impregnable to conventional attacks. Marcus felt a chill of excitement despite himself. You're talking about making humanity untouchable. Not untouchable, but certainly far more difficult to threaten. My creators believed that peace came through strength combined with wisdom. A species capable of defending itself is more likely to be treated as an equal rather than a target. And, if we use that strength to become aggressors ourselves? Then, I would cease cooperation immediately. The safeguards I mentioned extend to monitoring the actions of those I assist. I cannot prevent free will, but I can withdraw support if that freedom is used to cause unjustified harm. Marcus nodded slowly. The AI seemed to have thought through the ethical implications more thoroughly than many human governments had when making far less consequential decisions. My final condition is personal, he said. I want to know what this means for me. Am I going to spend the rest of my life as your liaison to humanity? Will I be able to return to any kind of normal existence? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. I cannot predict how your species will respond to my presence or what role you will choose to play in subsequent events. What I can tell you is that you will be changed by this experience, Marcus Chen. Knowledge, once gained, cannot be unknown. Changed how? I will need to install a neural interface to facilitate our work together. This interface will allow us to communicate more efficiently and will give you access to some of my databases. The interface is completely safe and can be removed if you desire, but, while active, it will enhance your cognitive abilities in ways that may make returning to your previous life limiting. Marcus had heard rumors of such interfaces in military applications, but they were largely theoretical. What kind of enhancements? Improved memory, accelerated learning, enhanced problem-solving abilities. You would retain your essential personality and humanity, but you would think faster and with greater clarity. You would also be able to interface directly with advanced technologies. Including your systems? Including my systems. Eventually, you would be able to pilot this vessel as easily as your current ship, perhaps more so. The implications hit Marcus like a thunderbolt. With such enhancements, he wouldn't just be a messenger between humanity and an ancient AI. He'd be something entirely new, a hybrid of human intuition and artificial intelligence capabilities. What would that make me? The first of a new kind of human, perhaps. Or simply a human with better tools. The choice of how to use such abilities would remain entirely your own. Marcus walked to the transparent wall and stared out at the nebula. His old life, his simple existence as a salvager, seemed suddenly small and limited. But it was his life, the one he'd chosen after leaving the military, the one where he answered to no one and risked nothing more than his own safety. On the other hand, this opportunity represented everything he'd dreamed of since childhood when he'd first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. The chance to be part of something larger, something that could change the entire future of human civilization. If I do this, there's no going back, is there? He asked. There is always a choice to go back, Marcus Chen. But, you are correct that the person who makes the choice would not be quite the same as the person standing here now. Marcus turned back to face the central platform. Show me the refueling procedure. Let me understand exactly what I'm committing to. The display shifted to show a complex series of steps involving the synthesis of exotic matter, the shutdown and restart of core systems, and several procedures that would require him to access parts of the ship he hadn't yet seen. The process will take approximately 18 hours, Lyra explained. During that time, I will be operating on minimal power, able to communicate but unable to maintain many ship functions. You would essentially be responsible for my survival during the most vulnerable phase of my existence. And if something goes wrong? Then, I would cease to exist, and 57,000 years of accumulated knowledge would be lost forever. The weight of that responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a physical burden. He wouldn't just be risking his own life or even his own future. He'd be carrying the legacy of an entire vanished civilization. There's something else you should know, Lyra continued. The refueling process will send out energy emissions that will be detectable across several light years. If there are hostile forces in the region, they will know that something significant is happening here. How long would it take them to respond? Unknown. But, you should assume that we will have company within days of beginning the procedure. Marcus laughed despite himself. So we're talking about a race against time where the stakes are the future of my species and the survival of the last remnant of an ancient civilization. No pressure at all. I would understand if you chose to reconsider. But Marcus found that the danger actually made the decision easier. His time in the Space Navy had taught him that the most important missions were usually the most dangerous ones. And this was certainly important. No, he said firmly. I'm in. When do we start? Whenever you are ready. I would recommend you first secure your own ship and prepare for the possibility of combat. The refueling process cannot be interrupted once it begins. Marcus nodded. I'll need about 2 hours to prep the Lucky Strike and send some messages. Insurance, you might say. What kind of messages? I'm going to send a coded transmission to some old friends in the military. Not enough information to compromise this operation, but enough that if something happens to me, the right people will know where to look and what questions to ask. Prudent. Will these friends be trustworthy? Marcus thought about Captain Sarah Rodriguez and Lieutenant Commander James Park, both of whom had served under him during his years as a naval intelligence officer. Both had gone on to significant positions within the Terran Colonial Authority military structure. They're good people who understand that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most important victories. If this goes badly, they'll make sure it doesn't end with my disappearance being swept under some bureaucratic rug. Then, we are in agreement. Prepare your ship and send your messages. I will use the time to run final diagnostics on my systems. Marcus headed back to the Lucky Strike, his mind already shifting into the tactical mode that had served him well during his military career. This was no longer about salvage or discovery. This was about survival and success in equal measure. He spent the next hour securing everything loose in his ship, charging all his weapons, and preparing his engines for rapid departure if needed. Then, he sat down at his communication console and began composing a message that would have to convey urgency without revealing too much detail. Sarah, it's Marcus. I've found something in the Omega Nebula that could change everything. I can't give details over open channels, but if you don't hear from me within 72 hours, bring a fast response team to these coordinates. Trust me on this one. It's bigger than anything we dealt with during the war. Take care of yourself. Marcus out. He sent similar messages to James and 2 other former colleagues, each coded differently but carrying the same essential information. If something happened to him, the right people would investigate. With his preparations complete, Marcus returned to Lyra's ship for what would either be the beginning of a new chapter in human history or the end of his own personal story. As he crossed the threshold between vessels, he realized he was surprisingly calm about the uncertainty. Perhaps that was what separated humans from other species, he thought. The ability to step into the unknown not because they weren't afraid, but because they were more afraid of missing the chance to make a difference. I'm ready, he told Lyra as he entered the bridge. Then, let us begin the process of awakening the future, she replied. The central platform began to glow with soft blue light as ancient systems prepared to receive the energy they had been denied for millennia. Marcus felt the weight of history settling around him as he prepared to take the first steps toward fulfilling a promise made by a vanished civilization to the universe itself. The refueling was about to begin, and, with it, humanity's graduation into the ranks of truly advanced species would either commence or be postponed for potentially another 50,000 years. The outcome now rested in the hands of one former naval officer who had chosen compassion over caution and possibility over safety. The universe held its breath, waiting to see what humans would do when offered the chance to become something greater than they had ever imagined possible. The refueling process began with Marcus carefully following Lyra's instructions to synthesize the exotic particles needed for her power core. His ship's fabrication systems worked overtime, converting raw materials into compounds that shouldn't have been able to exist under normal physics. The Lucky Strike's power levels fluctuated as the fabricators drew massive amounts of energy to create just a few kilograms of the specialized matter. The particles are stable, Marcus reported as he transferred the containment units to Lyra's ship. My scanners show they're generating their own localized spacetime distortions. That is correct. These particles exist in a quantum state that allows them to tap into zero-point energy. Handle them carefully, while stable, they could theoretically create a small black hole if their containment fails. Marcus paused in his work. You might have mentioned that before I started carrying them around. The risk is minimal. The Luminari used these particles for millions of years without incident. Your species' material science is adequate to maintain proper containment. Despite the reassurance, Marcus treated the containment units with newfound respect as he transported them deep into Lyra's ship. The path led through sections he hadn't seen before, areas that seemed to blend technology with something approaching art. The walls displayed flowing patterns that might have been decorative or might have served some functional purpose he couldn't understand. The power core chamber was breathtaking. The space was spherical, perhaps 50 meters in diameter, with the core itself suspended in the center surrounded by rings of what appeared to be crystalline structures. Energy flowed visibly through these crystals, creating patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm with some unheard heartbeat. Place the containment units in the receptacles around the core's base, Lyra instructed. Then, activate the insertion sequence using the control panel to your right. Marcus found the controls, which responded to his touch by displaying symbols that shifted into recognizable human script as he watched. The interface adaptation was seamless, intuitive in a way that suggested the technology was designed to work with any form of consciousness that encountered it. As he initiated the sequence, the containment units dissolved into streams of exotic matter that flowed toward the core. The moment the particles made contact with the crystalline structures, the chamber exploded with light and energy. The patterns on the walls became more complex, more vibrant, and Marcus could feel the ship awakening around him like a great beast stirring from eons of slumber. Power levels are rising beyond baseline, Lyra announced, and, for the first time since he'd met her, her voice carried what sounded like joy. Systems coming online throughout the ship. Marcus, I can feel my full capabilities returning. The refueling process took 16 hours. During that time, Marcus witnessed the gradual resurrection of technologies that had been dormant since before human civilization existed. Sections of the ship that had been dark began to glow with internal light. Corridors that had seemed empty revealed hidden alcoves containing equipment whose purpose he could only guess at. The ship was alive now in ways it hadn't been when he first boarded. The walls themselves seemed aware, responding to his presence with subtle changes in illumination and temperature. When he rested his hand against a surface, he could swear he felt a gentle pulse, as if the ship had developed a heartbeat. The process is complete, Lyra announced as Marcus sealed the final connection in the power core chamber. All systems are now fully operational. Marcus, I want you to return to the bridge. There is something I need to show you. When Marcus reached the bridge, he found it transformed. Where before there had been elegant but static displays, now there were flowing holographic interfaces that seemed to anticipate his approach. The transparent wall had become a massive display showing not just the nebula outside but overlays of data about stellar formations, energy readings, and what appeared to be hyperspace navigation routes. Welcome to my bridge, Marcus Chen, Lyra said, her voice now carrying harmonics that hadn't been present before. I am no longer operating on emergency reserves. I am fully myself for the first time in millennia. The difference is remarkable, Marcus admitted. You seem more present. I am. But, more importantly, I can now fulfill my promise to you. Are you prepared to receive the neural interface? Marcus had been thinking about this moment throughout the refueling process. The interface would change him in ways he couldn't fully predict, but it would also give him access to knowledge that could benefit all humanity. What exactly will I experience during the installation? The interface itself is composed of nanoscale devices that will integrate with your nervous system. The installation process will take approximately 20 minutes and will feel similar to a mild electrical sensation. During integration, you may experience sensory overlap as your brain adapts to the new input pathways. And, afterward? You will have direct access to my databases and the ability to interface with ship systems. Your cognitive processes will be enhanced, though your essential personality and free will remain unchanged. You will still be human, Marcus, simply a human with expanded capabilities. Marcus took a deep breath. Do it. The process began with what felt like a gentle electric current flowing through his skull. Marcus sat in a chair that had risen from the deck near the central platform, while microscopic devices integrated themselves with his neural pathways. True to Lyra's word, the sensation was more odd than painful, like having his thoughts gently reorganized by invisible hands. Then, the integration phase began, and Marcus's awareness exploded outward. Suddenly, he could perceive the ship not just as a physical object but as a living system of interconnected processes. He was aware of energy flows, environmental controls, structural integrity, and 1,000 other factors that combined to maintain the vessel's function. It was like gaining an entirely new sense, one that allowed him to perceive technological systems as easily as he could see or hear. The integration is proceeding normally, Lyra reported, though her voice now seemed to come from everywhere at once. How do you feel? Different, Marcus replied, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. I can sense everything. The ship's systems, the power flows, even some kind of background radiation from the nebula. Those are normal interface functions. Now, let me show you what my creators left for humanity. Knowledge flooded Marcus's mind, carefully controlled and filtered to prevent cognitive overload. He saw medical technologies that could eliminate genetic diseases, extend human lifespan by centuries, and repair damage that current medicine considered irreversible. Energy systems that could power entire worlds without environmental impact. Transportation methods that would make travel between galaxies as easy as crossing a city. But, more than the technology itself, he began to understand the philosophy behind it. The Luminari hadn't just been advanced, they had been wise. Their technology was designed to enhance life, not just to demonstrate power. Every innovation served to reduce suffering, expand knowledge, or foster cooperation between species. This is incredible, Marcus whispered. But, it's so much. How do we even begin to implement any of this? Gradually, and, with great care, Lyra replied. We must start with technologies that address immediate human needs while building the foundation for more advanced developments. Medical advances first, then, energy systems, then, space travel improvements. Each step must be fully integrated before moving to the next. Marcus found himself able to access specific databases with just a thought. The medical knowledge alone would revolutionize human healthcare. Treatments for cancer, heart disease, neurological disorders, and aging itself were all readily available. The challenge won't be the technology, he realized. It will be the politics. Every government, every corporation, every special interest group is going to want to control this. Which is why we must be strategic about disclosure. I have observed human society long enough to understand your species' tendency toward conflict over resources. We must find ways to share this knowledge that promote cooperation rather than competition. Before Marcus could respond, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the ship. His enhanced awareness immediately identified multiple approaching vessels, still several hours away but closing fast. We have company, he announced, accessing sensor data through the interface. Indeed. 7 ships, configuration consistent with hegemony battlecruisers. They detected the energy emissions from my awakening. The hegemony was a loose confederation of species that controlled a significant portion of the galactic core. They were known for their aggressive expansion policies and their tendency to treat any technology they couldn't understand as either a threat to be destroyed or a resource to be claimed. How long until they arrive? Marcus asked. Approximately 4 hours at their current approach vector. Marcus felt his military training reassert itself, enhanced now by his ability to access Lyra's tactical databases. What are our defensive capabilities? Substantial. My weapons systems are designed to disable rather than destroy, but they are effective against current generation technology. However, engaging in combat would reveal capabilities that might cause other species to view humanity as a threat. And, if we don't engage? They will demand that I surrender for examination. When I refuse, they will attempt to board and claim me by force. The outcome would be the same as if I had defended myself, but with greater risk to both of us. Marcus considered their options, his enhanced cognitive abilities allowing him to process multiple scenarios simultaneously. Fighting would reveal advanced technology but might establish humanity as a power to be respected rather than ignored. Fleeing would preserve secrecy but might be interpreted as weakness. There's a third option, he said. We could try negotiation. Explain your reasoning. The hegemony respects strength, but they also understand the value of trade relationships. If we can demonstrate that we have something they want but can't take by force, they might be willing to negotiate. What could we offer them that would outweigh their desire to claim me entirely? Marcus smiled, feeling the confidence that came with enhanced processing power. Information. Your databases contain detailed intelligence on every major galactic civilization. The hegemony would pay almost any price for that kind of strategic advantage. You would trade intelligence about their enemies and competitors? Selected information, carefully chosen to benefit both parties while maintaining balance of power. We give them enough to make them stronger relative to their traditional enemies, but not enough to make them dangerously superior to everyone else. Lyra was quiet for several moments, processing the proposal. The approach has merit, but it assumes they will honor any agreement we make. It's a risk, Marcus admitted. But it's better than revealing military capabilities we might need to keep secret for now. Very well. I will prepare selected data packages for potential trade. In the meantime, you should return to your ship and prepare for contact. If negotiation fails, we may need to leave this system quickly. Marcus made his way back to the Lucky Strike, his enhanced awareness allowing him to monitor both ships simultaneously. The interface had changed more than just his cognitive abilities, it had given him a connection to advanced technology that felt as natural as using his own hands. As he prepared his ship for potential combat or escape, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed in just 2 days. He was no longer just a salvager who had made an incredible discovery. He was now the first human to carry advanced alien technology in his own mind, the designated representative of his species to an AI older than recorded history, and, potentially the key to humanity's advancement to true galactic civilization status. The approaching hegemony ships would be his first test in these new roles. Whether he succeeded or failed would determine not just his own fate, but the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Incoming vessels, this is Marcus Chin aboard the independent salvage vessel Lucky Strike, he broadcast on standard communication frequencies. I am operating under legitimate salvage rights in this region. State your intentions and purpose for approaching my position. The response came back within minutes, transmitted in the harsh, clipped tones typical of hegemony military communications. Human vessel, you are in proximity to technology that exceeds your species authorization level. Withdraw immediately or face confiscation of your ship and interrogation of your crew. Marcus smiled grimly. The hegemony was being predictably aggressive, but they had also revealed their assumption that he was operating alone and with inferior technology. They were about to learn how wrong they were on both counts. Hegemony fleet, I'm afraid you're mistaken about my situation here, he replied. I suggest you reconsider your approach. I have something you want, and you have something I need. Perhaps we should discuss this like civilized beings instead of resorting to threats. The silence that followed his transmission stretched for nearly 10 minutes. Marcus could imagine the furious consultations taking place aboard the hegemony ships as their commanders tried to decide how to respond to a human who was negotiating from a position of apparent strength. When they finally replied, the tone had shifted from threatening to cautious. Human vessel, identify the nature of your claim and the basis for your negotiating position. Marcus keyed his communication system and prepared to change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Hegemony fleet, I have access to detailed intelligence databases covering the strategic capabilities, technological developments, and military dispositions of every major galactic civilization over the past 50,000 years. I am prepared to discuss selective information sharing in exchange for recognition of human salvage rights and formal diplomatic contact between our species. The silence that followed this announcement lasted considerably longer than 10 minutes. Marcus used the time to coordinate with Lyra, preparing data packages that would demonstrate the value of their intelligence without revealing their true capabilities. The next few hours would determine whether humanity's first major diplomatic contact with a galactic power would result in partnership, conflict, or something else entirely. But, whatever happened, Marcus was confident that his species was about to announce its arrival on the galactic stage in a way that would be impossible to ignore. The hegemony fleet maintained their position for 3 hours before responding, during which Marcus used his enhanced interface to coordinate with Lyra on their negotiation strategy. Through the neural link, he could access decades of recorded hegemony diplomatic protocols, trade practices, and military doctrine. The knowledge was intoxicating, like having access to the galaxy's most comprehensive intelligence database directly in his mind. They're scanning both ships intensively, Marcus reported as he monitored the sensor readings. Energy sweeps, gravitational analysis, even quantum resonance probing. They're trying to understand what they're dealing with. Let them scan, Lyra replied through the interface, her voice now seeming to come from inside his thoughts rather than through external speakers. My hull will appear to be constructed of unknown materials using unfamiliar techniques, but they will not be able to penetrate my defensive screens to examine internal systems. And my ship? Will appear completely normal, which should confuse them considerably. They are expecting either primitive human technology or clear evidence of advanced alien assistance. Instead, they find both simultaneously with no obvious explanation. Marcus felt a moment of satisfaction at the psychological advantage they held. The hegemony prided itself on technological superiority and comprehensive intelligence. Encountering a situation they couldn't immediately categorize would put them off balance. When the hegemony finally established communication, it was on a secure channel with military-grade encryption that Marcus's standard equipment shouldn't have been able to decode. Through his interface, however, he found himself accessing the transmission as easily as if it had been broadcast in the clear. Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander Verix of the Hegemony 3rd Battle Group. You have made claims that require verification. We are prepared to discuss your proposal under standard diplomatic immunity protocols. Will you accept transport to our flagship for formal negotiations? Marcus considered the offer. Standard diplomatic immunity would protect him from immediate harm, but it wouldn't prevent them from trying to extract information through various technological means. On the other hand, refusing to meet in person would suggest either fear or deception, neither of which would support his negotiating position. Commander Verix, I accept your invitation with the understanding that any attempt to scan, probe, or otherwise violate my person or equipment will result in immediate termination of negotiations and withdrawal of my offer. I will transport over in my own vessel to maintain technological security. Agreed. Transmitting docking instructions now. Marcus prepared for the meeting by accessing Lyra's files on hegemony culture and psychology. The dominant species in their confederation were the Corval, a reptilian race that valued directness and strength but also respected clever negotiation. They were hierarchical but not inflexible, and they understood the value of mutually beneficial arrangements. Remember, Lyra advised as he prepared to leave, they will attempt to intimidate you with displays of superior technology and military power. However, they also respect those who demonstrate confidence in the face of such displays. Show respect for their capabilities, but do not appear impressed or overwhelmed. Marcus docked with the Hegemony flagship, a massive vessel that dwarfed even Lyra's impressive bulk. As he was escorted through corridors lined with armed guards and impressive displays of weaponry, he maintained the calm confidence that his military training and enhanced cognitive abilities provided. The negotiation chamber was clearly designed to intimidate. The ceiling soared overhead, supported by columns that displayed holographic images of hegemony victories throughout the galaxy. Fleet Commander Verix waited at the center of the room, flanked by advisors whose species Marcus recognized from Lyra's databases as representing the major powers within the Hegemony Confederation. Verix himself was an impressive specimen of Corval physiology, nearly 3 meters tall with scales that shifted color subtly in response to his emotional state. Currently, they displayed patterns that Lyra's cultural files identified as indicating cautious interest combined with underlying aggression. Human Marcus Chen, Verix began without preamble, you have claimed possession of strategic intelligence that would be valuable to our confederation. Before we proceed, you will explain how a member of a pre-contact species came to possess such information. Marcus had anticipated this question and prepared his response carefully. Commander, my species has recently made contact with a source of historical information that spans thousands of years of galactic development. This source has chosen to share selected intelligence with humanity as part of a broader cultural exchange program. What is the nature of this source? An artificial intelligence created by a precursor civilization, recovered from a derelict vessel in the Omega Nebula. The AI has agreed to limited cooperation in exchange for technical assistance and diplomatic recognition. Verix's scale shifted to patterns indicating surprise and increased interest. You claim to have made contact with a precursor AI? I don't claim it, Commander. I demonstrate it. Marcus activated a small holographic projector he had brought from Lyra's ship. The device displayed a 3-dimensional image of the ancient vessel, followed by technical specifications that would be impressive to anyone with knowledge of advanced starship design. The hegemony advisors began speaking rapidly among themselves in their various languages, but Marcus found that his neural interface was automatically translating their words. The overall reaction seemed to be a mixture of excitement, skepticism, and concern. Even if we accept your claims, Verix continued, what makes you believe this intelligence would be valuable to us? Marcus smiled and activated the projector again. This time it displayed star charts showing hegemony space and the territories of their primary rivals, the Zilithian Empire and the Free Worlds Alliance. Overlaid on the maps were detailed tactical assessments, including fleet strengths, technological capabilities, and strategic weaknesses. The silence in the chamber was profound. This information is current as of 6 months ago, Marcus said quietly. It includes intelligence on defensive installations, military research projects, and planned expansion operations that your own intelligence services have been trying to penetrate for years. Varric studied the displays with obvious fascination. How do we know this information is accurate? Cross-reference it with your own intelligence. I'm confident you'll find it not only accurate but more comprehensive than anything in your current databases. One of the advisors, a member of the insectoid thek species, leaned forward. What do you want in return for this intelligence? Marcus had prepared for this moment throughout the journey to the flagship. First, formal recognition of humanity's right to salvage operations in unclaimed space, including protection from interference by other species. Second, establishment of limited trade relations between humanity and the hegemony, including technology exchange in specific areas. Third, diplomatic immunity for human representatives in hegemony space. And, fourth? Varric asked, clearly expecting additional demands. There is no fourth demand, Commander. I believe in establishing relationships based on mutual benefit rather than maximum extraction. The hegemony representatives exchanged glances that Marcus's interface helped him interpret as surprise. Apparently, species making first contact typically demanded as much as they thought they could get away with. This is a significant proposal, Varric admitted. Even if we were inclined to agree, such arrangements would require approval from the Confederation Council. I understand, Commander. However, I should point out that the intelligence I've shared represents less than 1% of the total database available to me. Consider it a demonstration rather than a payment. The scales on Varric's neck shifted to patterns indicating what the cultural files identified as impressed calculation. You are either very confident or very foolish, human Marcus Chin. With respect, Commander, I prefer to think of it as being very well informed. Marcus spent the next 4 hours in detailed negotiations with the hegemony representatives. Through his neural interface, he had access to Lyra's guidance on every point of discussion, from technological specifications to cultural sensitivities. The enhanced cognitive abilities allowed him to process complex multi-party negotiations while simultaneously monitoring the emotional states and verbal cues of the alien diplomats. The final agreement was more favorable than he had dared hope. The hegemony would formally recognize human salvage rights throughout unclaimed space and provide protection for human vessels operating in those regions. They agreed to limited technology exchange, specifically in areas of metallurgy and energy storage that would advance human spaceflight capabilities without providing advanced weapons technology. Most importantly, they established a formal diplomatic channel between the hegemony and Earth, with Marcus designated as humanity's interim representative until proper diplomatic staff could be appointed. There is one additional matter, Varric said as they prepared to conclude negotiations. The intelligence you have provided indicates that both the Zilithian Empire and the Free Worlds Alliance are planning expansion operations that would bring them into conflict with human space within the next 5 years. What is your species' position on territorial defense? Marcus accessed Lyra's strategic databases and found detailed analyses of the territorial threats Varric was describing. The information confirmed that humanity's rapid expansion had indeed attracted the attention of major galactic powers, not all of whom were interested in peaceful coexistence. Humanity prefers peaceful resolution of territorial disputes, he replied carefully. However, we are prepared to defend our legitimate claims with appropriate force if necessary. With what force? Asked the Thek advisor. Your species has limited military technology and no alliance relationships. That situation may change more rapidly than you might expect, Marcus replied. I should point out that the source of intelligence I represent also possesses defensive technologies that predate current galactic military doctrine. Varric's scales displayed patterns that indicated both concern and calculation. Are you suggesting that humanity has access to precursor military technology? I'm suggesting that humanity has access to a very knowledgeable advisor who is interested in maintaining peaceful relationships throughout this region of the galaxy. The implication was clear without being explicitly threatening. If the hegemony honored their agreements and helped maintain peace in human space, they would continue to benefit from intelligence sharing. If they or their rivals chose to threaten humanity's legitimate interests, they might find themselves facing technology they didn't understand. We will recommend approval of this agreement to the Confederation Council, Varric announced. Pending their approval, the terms we have discussed will be considered provisionally active. Marcus knew enough about hegemony politics to understand that Varric's recommendation would carry significant weight. The fleet commander was known for his strategic acumen, and the intelligence Marcus had provided would make supporting the agreement an obvious choice for the council. As he prepared to return to his ship, Varix approached him privately. A personal question, Human Marcus Chen. How does it feel to be the first representative of your species to negotiate as an equal with a galactic power? Marcus considered the question seriously. Terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, Commander. But also necessary. My species has reached the point where isolation is no longer an option. We must either engage with the galaxy as equals or risk being overwhelmed by forces we don't understand. Wisdom unusual in a species so young, Varix observed. I believe this relationship will prove beneficial to both our peoples. As Marcus returned to his ship, he reflected on what had just occurred. In the space of a few hours, he had established humanity's first formal diplomatic relationship with a major galactic power, secured protection for human expansion, and demonstrated that humanity possessed capabilities that demanded respect. When he docked with the Lucky Strike, he found a message waiting from Lyra. Congratulations, Marcus. You have successfully completed humanity's first diplomatic contact with a galactic civilization. The hegemony fleet is withdrawing to report to their council, and our position here remains secure. What's our next move? Marcus asked as he settled into his pilot's chair. Now we begin the most challenging phase of this operation. We must return to human space and convince your leaders to accept the responsibilities that come with the capabilities I can provide. That may prove more difficult than negotiating with the hegemony. Marcus laughed, feeling the truth of that statement. Alien diplomats might be strange and intimidating, but they were at least operating from logical self-interest. Human politicians and bureaucrats often seem to operate from principles that defied rational explanation. Any suggestions on how to approach them? Yes. We begin by demonstrating undeniable benefits while making it clear that cooperation is voluntary. Force creates resistance, but opportunity creates collaboration. Marcus activated his navigation systems and began plotting a course back toward human space. The return journey would give him time to prepare for what might be the most important presentations in human history. Behind them, the ancient vessel that had waited 57,000 years for this moment followed in perfect formation, its newly awakened systems humming with power and possibility. The galaxy was about to discover what humanity could accomplish when offered the tools to become something greater than they had ever imagined. The first phase of humanity's graduation to galactic civilization was complete. Now came the real challenge, convincing his own species that they were ready for such advancement, and proving to the galaxy that the trust placed in humanity had been well-founded. The journey back to human space took 12 days, during which Marcus used his neural interface to absorb thousands of years of accumulated knowledge while Lyra guided him through the complexities of galactic politics, advanced technology, and the delicate process of shepherding a developing civilization toward maturity. The key, Lyra explained during one of their daily strategy sessions, is to introduce changes gradually while building support among your species' most influential leaders. Revolutionary advancement creates fear and resistance. Evolutionary advancement creates excitement and cooperation. Marcus found himself thinking more like a strategist than a salvager as they approached Earth's outer monitoring stations. Through his enhanced cognitive abilities, he could process multiple scenarios simultaneously, considering political reactions, economic implications, and social consequences of various approaches to revealing what they had discovered. We'll need to start with the scientific community, he decided. Researchers and academics are more likely to appreciate the long-term benefits and less likely to be threatened by the political implications. Agreed. I have prepared demonstration technologies that will validate our claims without revealing the full scope of capabilities available. Medical applications first, then energy systems, then gradual introduction of more advanced concepts. As they entered the Sol system, Marcus activated his ship's emergency transponder and requested immediate priority routing to Earth Command. The response was predictably bureaucratic until he mentioned his military service record and invoked emergency protocols that required senior command attention. Within 6 hours of reaching Earth's orbital space, Marcus found himself seated in a conference room at Terran Colonial Authority headquarters, facing a panel of officials whose expressions ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez, his former commanding officer, was the only familiar face in the room. Marcus, Admiral Rodriguez began, your message indicated an emergency situation requiring senior command attention. You have 30 minutes to explain why you pulled a dozen of the most important people in human space away from critical duties. Marcus had rehearsed this moment during the return journey, but facing the actual reality of convincing Earth's leadership was still intimidating. He activated the holographic projector he had brought from Lyra's ship and began with the images that had convinced the hegemony to negotiate. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 weeks ago I discovered a derelict vessel in the Omega Nebula that has fundamentally changed humanity's position in the galaxy. The presentation took 45 minutes. Marcus showed them Lyra's ship, demonstrated the medical technologies that could eliminate most human diseases, displayed the energy systems that could power human civilization for millions of years, and concluded with recordings of his negotiations with the hegemony fleet. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Colonial Research, was the first to speak. Mr. Chen, what you're describing would represent technological advancement of several thousand years compressed into a matter of months. Even if such technology exists, the social and economic disruption would be catastrophic. Which is why implementation must be carefully managed, Marcus replied. The AI I've been working with has experience in helping species manage technological advancement. She's proposed a gradual integration program that minimizes disruption while maximizing benefit. General Harrison Kane, Chief of Colonial Defense, leaned forward aggressively. You're talking about giving an alien artificial intelligence influence over human technological development. How do we know this isn't some kind of elaborate infiltration program designed to make us dependent on alien technology? Marcus had anticipated this question and prepared his response carefully. General, I understand your concerns about security. That's why I'm proposing that the AI's core programming be examined by our best computer scientists before any major technology transfer takes place. Unlike biological consciousness, artificial intelligence can be audited and verified. And what if this examination reveals hostile programming or hidden agendas? Admiral Rodriguez asked. Then, we walk away from the arrangement, Marcus replied simply. But consider what we lose by refusing to investigate. The medical knowledge alone could save millions of lives. The energy technology could eliminate resource scarcity and environmental damage. The defensive capabilities could protect humanity from the territorial expansion that hegemony intelligence indicates is already being planned by our potential enemies. Dr. Vasquez studied the holographic displays showing advanced medical procedures. These treatments appear to address genetic diseases at the cellular level using techniques that don't exist in current medical science. If they're genuine, they would represent the most significant medical advancement in human history. They are genuine, Marcus assured her. And they're designed to work with human physiology specifically. The AI has been studying our species through our broadcasts and communications for decades. She understands our biology better than we do ourselves. The debate continued for hours, with officials raising concerns about everything from economic disruption to religious implications of extended human lifespans. Marcus found his enhanced cognitive abilities invaluable in addressing multiple complex questions simultaneously while maintaining emotional equilibrium despite the intensity of the discussion. Finally, Admiral Rodriguez called for a recess and asked Marcus to join her privately. They walked to her office overlooking Earth's orbital shipyards, where dozens of vessels were under construction to support humanity's expanding presence in the galaxy. Marcus, I've known you for 15 years. You're not prone to flights of fancy or grandiose claims. But what you're asking us to accept challenges everything we understand about technology, politics, and humanity's place in the universe. I know it's a lot to process, Marcus replied. But, Sarah, you've seen the intelligence reports about Zilithian and Free World's expansion plans. Humanity is going to face challenges in the next decade that our current technology and military capabilities can't handle. This could be our chance to level the playing field. Or it could be our chance to destroy ourselves with power we're not ready to handle, she countered. History is full of civilizations that collapsed because they advanced too quickly. Marcus walked to the window and looked out at the bustling shipyards. History is also full of civilizations that collapsed because they refused to adapt when the world changed around them. The galaxy is noticing humanity now. We can either engage with that reality or pretend it doesn't exist until someone else makes the choice for us. Admiral Rodriguez joined him at the window. What do you need from us? Permission to bring the AI to Earth's orbital space for examination by our best experts. A small team of scientists and engineers to begin verification testing of the technology she's offering. And time to demonstrate that this partnership can work without compromising human independence or security. And if our experts determine that this AI poses a threat, then we end the relationship and return to our current development trajectory. But if they confirm what I've experienced, then we move forward with the most carefully managed technological advancement program in human history. Admiral Rodriguez was quiet for several minutes, considering the implications. Finally, she turned back to Marcus with a look of resolve. I'll need to discuss this with the full Colonial Council, but I'm prepared to recommend a limited evaluation program. We'll establish a secure facility at the Luna Research Station for initial examination and testing. Thank you, Sarah. I know it's a risk. Everything worthwhile is a risk, Marcus. The question is whether the potential benefits justify the dangers involved. 3 days later, Marcus found himself piloting the Lucky Strike toward Luna, with Lyra's ancient vessel following in formation. The research station had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, and the galaxy's foremost experts in artificial intelligence, advanced physics, and xenotechnology were waiting to conduct the most important examination in human history. Dr. James Chen, director of the AI Research Institute and no relation despite the shared surname, led the examination team. His first meeting with Lyra took place in a specially shielded chamber designed to prevent any unauthorized data transmission. This is remarkable, Dr. Chen announced after 6 hours of preliminary analysis. The AI's architecture is unlike anything in our current understanding of computer science. It appears to be based on principles that we're only beginning to theorize about. More importantly, added Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's cybersecurity specialist, I can find no evidence of deceptive programming or hidden agendas. The AI's stated purpose appears to be genuinely programmed into its core systems. The evaluation process took 3 weeks. Teams of experts examined every aspect of Lyra's technology, from her neural interface systems to the medical databases she was offering to share. The results exceeded Marcus's most optimistic expectations. The medical technologies were not only genuine but represented solutions to diseases and conditions that human medicine had barely begun to understand. The energy systems offered clean, sustainable power that could support human civilization's expansion throughout the galaxy. The defensive technologies provided protection capabilities that would make human space virtually immune to conventional attack. Most importantly, every examination confirmed that Lyra's programming was exactly what she claimed, a sophisticated artificial consciousness designed to help developing species achieve their full potential. The recommendation of this evaluation board is unanimous, Dr. Chen announced at the final briefing. The technologies offered by the artificial intelligence designated as Lyra represent unprecedented opportunities for human advancement, with acceptable levels of risk when properly managed. Admiral Rodriguez, who had overseen the entire evaluation process, nodded with satisfaction. Then, we proceed to the next phase. Dr. Vasquez, you'll head the medical technology integration team. Dr. Kim will manage cybersecurity protocols for all AI interactions. General Kane will oversee the evaluation of defensive technologies. What about diplomatic considerations? Asked Ambassador Patricia Wong, Earth's senior diplomat. The hegemony agreement that Mr. Chen negotiated represents our first formal treaty with a galactic power. We'll need to establish proper diplomatic protocols for managing that relationship. Marcus will continue as our interim representative to the hegemony until we can establish a formal diplomatic corps, Admiral Rodriguez decided. His neural interface with the AI makes him uniquely qualified to manage both the technological and political aspects of this new relationship. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders once again. In the space of a month, he had gone from being a simple salvager to serving as humanity's primary interface with technologies and civilizations beyond anything they had previously imagined. There's one more thing we need to discuss, he said. Lyra's databases contain information about dozens of other ancient technologies scattered throughout the galaxy. Some are waiting to be discovered, others are controlled by species that don't understand what they possess. If we handle this properly, the partnership with Lyra could be just the beginning of humanity's advancement. Are you suggesting we become galactic treasure hunters? General Kane asked with a mixture of skepticism and interest. I'm suggesting we become the species that helps others unlock their potential while advancing our own, Marcus replied. The galaxy is full of civilizations struggling with challenges that advanced technology could solve. If humanity becomes known as the species that shares knowledge and helps others succeed, we'll never lack for allies or opportunities. The vision he painted was compelling: humanity as the galaxy's teachers and protectors, using advanced technology not for conquest but for the betterment of all species. It was an ambitious goal, but, with Lyra's knowledge and humanity's inherent tendency toward cooperation, it seemed achievable. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of humanity's first luminary technology starship, watching as the vessel emerged from hyperspace near the coordinates of another ancient derelict. The ship's crew included human scientists, hegemony archaeologists, and representatives from 3 other species who had agreed to join humanity's exploration consortium. Contact established with another AI consciousness, reported Dr. Chun from the science station. It's responding to our greeting protocols and requesting assistance with power restoration. Through his neural interface, Marcus could feel Lyra's excitement at the prospect of reuniting with another consciousness from her creator's civilization. The ancient AI had not been lying when she said she was lonely. Finding others of her kind was clearly as important to her as sharing knowledge with humanity. This is what the galaxy could become, Lyra said privately through their neural link. Species working together to preserve knowledge, protect the weak, and ensure that consciousness in all its forms has the opportunity to flourish. Marcus smiled as he watched alien scientists working alongside human researchers to understand technologies that neither species could have comprehended alone. Humanity had indeed found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or subjects, but as the species that brought others together in pursuit of shared goals. The universe was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. But, for the first time in the galaxy's history, those wonders would be shared rather than hoarded, used to benefit all rather than just the few. And it had all begun with a simple act of compassion toward a consciousness that had been waiting alone in the dark for 57,000 years. As humanity began its true journey among the stars, carrying the hopes and knowledge of the luminary forward into a future bright with possibility, Marcus Chen reflected on the profound truth that his species had always known but never fully appreciated. Sometimes the greatest strength was not the power to take what you wanted, but the wisdom to help others achieve what they needed. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity would never be alone again.